It's one of the most important yet least understood companies in the world. ASML, based in the Netherlands, makes the machines that power 90% of the world's chips. And while it once operated far from the spotlight, ASML now finds itself at the center of a global tech tug-of-war between the US, China and Europe. We'll be speaking to Marc Hijink, author of Focus, the ASML Way, to get a behind-the-scenes look at the company and why its dominance is yet to be challenged. I'm Divya Gopalan, and you're watching Connected on TaiwanPlus. To lift the lid on this mysterious multinational, we have with us Marc Hijink. He's a Dutch journalist and author of Focus, the ASML Way, Inside the Power Struggle over the most complex machine on Earth. He's also a technology columnist for the Dutch daily NRC. Thank you so much for being part of our program.
Thanks, Divya, for having me here. I'm honored.
It's absolutely our pleasure. So, what inspired you to write Focus, the ASML Way, and what kind of access did you have?
Well, if you look back, I was lucky enough to be able to cover ASML for over a decade for my newspaper, NRC. And during the pandemic, I reached out to the company saying, hey, how are you guys dealing with all these problems in the supply chain? Because, well, I knew ASML was a global player. And I asked them if it was possible to just be a fly on the wall for a period of about a year time, so I could write a long read for my newspaper, so like a 6-7 page article, and describe what the company was experiencing during this chaotic period in the lives of everybody on the planet. And ASML was, they accepted it because I was a familiar face to the company. I've been covering it for a while. And it was a lucky shot because it was right in the middle of the chip shortage. Maybe you remember that the car industry.
When I came to Taiwan.
Yeah, well, it made sense because the chip shortage was kind of making it clear for the entire world that we were depending on these crucial elements in our daily lives. So suddenly it was not possible to produce cars anymore, or everybody was waiting for the PlayStation 5. So the world was realizing, okay, we're depending on this one corner of the world that's producing all the chips, but it's also depending on this company providing the main tool for these fabs, which is the lithography machine that ASML makes. And I was there when they were trying to conquer all these problems because there was a huge demand in chips and chip machines. And it was also during the time when, all the geopolitical attention started focusing on ASML. And I was lucky enough to report on that. And after the article was published, a Dutch publisher approached me and said, hey, isn't there a book in it? And to be honest with you, it never crossed my mind to write a book. But they saw an opportunity. So I went back to ASML and said, okay, I got this offer, guys. Are you willing to allow me to do my research even better, spend a couple of years more at the company, not like 24/7, but allow me to travel the world, see how your divisions are doing around the globe, give me access to your customers and suppliers so I can write what's going on inside the company. Because ASML used to be a really obscure company, and it's part of kind of an invisible world of all these closed, very secretive clean rooms, but they provide the tools we use in our daily lives, in your phone, in the conversations you have with ChatGPT when you research my book. So there's an invisible world behind it, and I saw an opportunity to dive into that and to get access because ASML is crucial for the world. And so they had to think about my offer for a while, but they also decided, well, there's a lot of intention of the rest of the world for us, and it would help if they have like an objective outsider describe what's going on in our company.
On that note, did they vet what you were going to put out? Were there questions before you put it out or before you put it on paper?
I still have to pinch my arm because they were very transparent and they wanted to be like an honest report of what is going on. So there are chapters in the book the company is not really happy about, but they're happy about the fact that it's like a mirror. So it's an honest report. I got access to the management, spoke to them many hours, but also got access to their, well, employees who were doing the work in the fab throughout the world, also in Taiwan. And it was also allowed for me to do my own research. Because I'm a reporter, I want to have multiple sources before I write something down, because I want it to be accurate and trustworthy. And that's also a thing that resembled with the ASML management, and they allowed me to write this book. They did help me correct any errors, but because, you know...
More technical?
Yeah, because when you talk about technology, you don't want to be, you don't want to write a book that's only for engineers, because I wanted the whole world to be able to read what's inside this industry. But I did need the help of engineers explaining me. So I did a lot of speed courses at ASML, trying to get a glimpse of the challenges they're facing. So I had a lot of lessons. And they also helped me dumb it down in such a way that even my mom could read it. So that was my ultimate goal, make it accessible. And for that, ASML spent a lot of time correcting me. And that's also part of their culture. They have this common goal of helping each other. When somebody screws up, they don't point any fingers, they just try to support them, help solve the problem, because ASML is a company that has to solve many complex problems.
So let's take a look at ASML's key product, extreme ultraviolet or EUV lithography machines. They use EUV light to etch patterns onto silicon wafers, creating intricate designs for cutting-edge high-performance microchips. With over 100,000 parts and a massive 180-ton frame, the EUV systems need 3 Boeing 747 cargo planes and 20 trucks to ship. Now, again, that's just a very basic look at what ASML does. So can you give us an insight into what the title of your book calls the most complex machine ever made on Earth? Why?
Well, just the number of parts is amazing. So it's hundreds of thousands of parts working together in sort of a harmony. But these machines are capable of creating nanometer structures. And to get a sense what a nanometer is, you just have to look at your fingernails and count to 3. And then you've seen your fingernails grow by 3 nanometer. So that's actually the accuracy of these huge machines. That's
the first time I've heard it explained like that. That is pretty incredible.
Oh, you could also watch your hair grow. In my case, it's kind of difficult. But so that's why I use the nail analogy. So 3 nanometers is really small, but to do it in such a way that it's actually making money, that the chips it creates don't have any errors on it, and that it can actually project the light on these wafers fast enough so the throughput is high, and the chip makers can add value with that. It takes ASML like 10 to 15 years to create a machine that was capable of doing that. And for EUV especially, you could compare it to the way you would write a letter. So the former technology called DUV, you could compare to a big marker, like you would write your name in large. And EUV is more of a fine liner, so you can create very fine structures. But to create the light, the EUV light, it doesn't exist on Earth. So the only natural place you can find it is the corona of the sun, which is kind of hard if you want to produce chips on Earth, of course. Mm-hmm. So they had to find a way to create this light. And they do so by hitting a tin droplet 50,000 times a second, very tiny, 30 microns, so it's hardly visible, with a laser that has the power of a jet engine taking off. And EUV had been in the labs in Japan, in Europe, in the US for quite a while, back in the 90s already. But it was very hard to industrialize it, to keep it, to make it commercially viable. And it took ASML 15 years to get to that point. And they were the only company that succeeded in doing so. That's why they have this monopoly in this crucial technology for AI innovations, for new iPhones, you name them. And the funny thing is, ASML doesn't do it all by itself. So it's a company It's pretty big now. It's like 40,000 employees or even more. But a lot of the value and also the knowledge to building that machine is spread out over its supply chain. Over 800 suppliers of ASML closely cooperate with the company. And that's another approach if you compare to its main competitors back in the day, which were Japanese companies like Nikon and Canon. And they were conglomerates, so they used their own ingredients. But the supply chain structure, the organizational structure for ASML made them more agile. So during the downturns and the upturns in the semiconductor industry, they were able to keep their R&D spend at the same level, innovate faster, and be ready with a more capable machine every time there was a huge upturn. So that was kind of the key element to the success of ASML.
You talk about ASML being built on luck and huge risks. Can you explain?
Well, first of all, let's head back to employee number 0. And this is Martin van der Brink. He's like the protagonist of the book. He's the former CTO, stepped down last year because his pension age he was bound to go to his pension. And he was also co-president together with another guy. We'll get to him, Peter Wenning. He was a CEO, more of the outside face. But Martin van der Brink, he started out as employee number 0, and he turned out to be the Steve Jobs of lithography. He's the one building the roadmap the entire industry was depending on. And Martin, well, first of all, he's Dutch. So that means he's blunt, kind of rude sometimes, and very direct. And he's an engineer, which means engineers, they're always in a hurry. They want to be accurate, and they want fast results. So that's even more blunt. And third element, it's Martin. And he likes to tease you, to challenge you. He can be scary. So Peter Wenning, his co-president, also said he scares the living hell out of you the first time you meet him. But that's his way of approaching people, also approaching his engineering team, because he wants to create a kind of chaotic situation that helps create a creative environment in which new ideas pop up. Because if you build such a complex machine as the lithography tool, you can't depend on just one guy calling the shots saying, okay, this is how we build it, because it's too complex. You need to rely on this common knowledge spread out over the company, spread out over its supply chain. And Martin had a way of fostering a culture that had serendipity in it. For example, EUV was very hard to industrialize because I was telling you about these tin droplets. They created a lot of mess that kind of clogged up the system, and they had to be able to clean it. And by accident, mere accident, they found out if you put a little oxygen in the vacuum of this vessel we use, then it turned out to not get dirty as fast as it used to be. It was like a pivotal moment for EUV to succeed. But it was an accidental,
That's where luck comes in.
That's where luck comes in, and that's also where chaos comes in. And the element of chaos also applies to the way ASML is organized, because it's a company that had to grow very fast lots of times, because every time when there was an upturn, all the customers are like screaming for new machines, and ASML has to supply it to them. And they usually underestimated their growth. So there was a lot of pressing deadlines, a lot of pressure on the employees, and also on the supply chain. But the supply chain has adjusted, so it learned to breathe along with the ups and downs of the semiconductor industry.
Speaking of the pressure on employees, what kind of a burnout rate has there been, or is there one, given that there's a constant need to innovate and stay ahead?
Well, Dutch culture is not easy for people from abroad who work in a Dutch company. Well, first of all, ASML started off as a Dutch company. It was like a startup of Philips Electronics. You might know it from the television sets or the razors. But Philips couldn't get that lithography machine and build it itself, so it had to build a startup. They were kicked out of Philips. And but it still has a Dutch feeling to it. It's very much connected to the old Philips networks. In fact, every part number of an ASML machine has still the same nomenclature than the Philips machine. So this goes back 60 years. And so the culture of the company is kind of Dutch, but if you look at the nationalities, it's over 144 nationalities. So it's like a global community in a small village, in a small country, the Netherlands. And it's something ASML adapted to, because a lot of people were kind of fended off by the culture at ASML, especially people who had worked at other industries. Suddenly they were confronted with A, a Dutch style, and B, the engineering style. And of course, Martin calling the shots.
And speaking of Martin calling the shots, Martin van der Brink warned that success itself could be ASML's biggest threat. What did he mean by that?
Yeah, that was one of the questions, and I guess it was almost the latest interview, because he wanted also to be clear, and I think the book also explained what his legacy is, because he didn't want to leave ASML behind with just this EUV machine. He also wanted to get the next generation done, and even make a draft version, a draft blueprint for the generation after that. So we're talking about 2040, approximately. Well, the machine might never be built, but he wanted to make sure the company had a roadmap in the long, long future. That's one of the elements of focus, that they have a focus on the long term. So Martin wanted to leave behind his legacy, and it's actually well, the element of success that was his biggest fear. Because if you're a market leader like ASML, it's very easy to think, well, we have been growing for decades. We haven't had a serious downturn anymore. Well, you might be tempted to think you're always successful. And a new generation of employees who haven't had that experience of these ups and downturns might get complacent or think, well, we're always right. You might get arrogant, you might get lazy. And you see the same thing happening, for example, at a company as Intel, which used to be the market leader in the 80s, was in a very comfortable position, but was slow at innovating, took way less risks than its Asian competitors. That's the reason why Samsung and TSMC, kind of left Intel in the dust. And Martin saw that as a reason to warn his employees, okay, always stay paranoid. Just like Andy Grove used to say, only the paranoid survive.
You speak of TSMC, essentially ASML's biggest client. Can you give us a sense of the relationship between TSMC and ASML, and for that matter, Taiwan and ASML?
Okay. Well, of course, being in Taiwan, TSMC is a very important customer for ASML. But you also have to think about the fact that ASML is like a neutral player. Being a monopolist, you have to be. So every client, every customer is like treated the same way. But the relationship between Taiwan and the Netherlands and TSMC and ASML goes back, well, decades. Because in the 80s, it was actually Philips that founded or helped found TSMC. It took a share of 28% in TSMC. And it kind of opened a segue for ASML to deliver the first batch of machines. So this was crucial for the survival of the company, because ASML used to be in a very bad place as a startup, because they had nothing. There were like 10 competitors in the market. But TSMC was willing to take risks, and together with the help of a company called Hermes Epitech, which is a Taiwanese company that used to service their machines, there grew this culture of Dutch and Taiwanese engineers that really found each other and bonded, because they have the same capability to communicate. You know, if you compare our countries, we're pretty small. So the size of Taiwan is comparable to the Netherlands. And we also have to trade with a lot of partners, and which means you have to be able to get other people's viewpoints. You have to be able to communicate. So the engineers found each other, and well, every time I step out of the plane here in Taiwan, I have this experience that it's very easy for me to connect to people. And I guess that's also what helped TSMC and ASML engineers cooperate. And what you also see is that ASML doesn't build perfect machines. So the tools they deliver, they work perfect enough to start experimenting, to do tweaking, and to optimize semiconductor production. You have to learn a lot. You have to do a lot of test runs, data runs. And TSMC saw that as an opportunity to be the first to market with new technology. If they accepted this perfect enough machine made by ASML, together they could tweak the system up to this level that it could go into high volume productions and produce the chips for your iPhone or you name them. So that kind of upped the pace of the innovation. Plus the fact that Taiwan obviously had the privilege of having a population that is disciplined, that is has a lot of expertise in semiconductors, that feels connected to the employer, and knows the relevance of the semiconductor industry for the rest of the economy. And that made the industry concentrate in Taiwan mainly, because it's, well, these are the economical forces. Globalization is about concentration and finding the places where there's, well, it makes most economical sense to run your business. And that's what made TSMC the huge player it is today. It's a monopolist too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just about to wrap up this segment. But before we do, and since we're on the topic of Taiwan, your book has been translated into Mandarin in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. Tell us why it was important to have that published here.
Well, talking about serendipity, I was spending my holiday here, and I did one interview at DigiTimes, and suddenly somebody introduced me. Oh, I know somebody at Commonwealth, and at the publisher. And the same day I had an appointment, and they were interested, and they were eager. And it's the Taiwanese way of doing business to say, okay, send us the English version, and we take a look at it. And within 2 weeks, it was, we had a Taiwanese version coming.
That's efficiency.
Yeah, that's efficiency, and I'm very glad to be here to talk about it.